Hey there gang, it's that time of year. We're just a couple weeks away from Thanksgiving, and here in the Midwest there is no side dish more ubiquitous and probably more loved than mashed potatoes. Today we're going to make a classic mashed potatoes. Growing up in a large German Scandinavian family, we had mashed potatoes all the time at holidays and pretty much all year round too. I fell in love with them as a little kid, and I just been gobbling them up ever since. Sadly, most people at home don't do a really good job with this important side dish. I think a lot of people just don't take it seriously enough and realize there are a few key steps that you have to take to get really great mashed potatoes that can take that whole meal up just a couple notches. So anyway, today I'm going to show you how to make the perfect mashed potatoes. All right, so let's get started. First, let's talk about the three main potato types you're going to find in this part of the country and why we want to use the ones we're going to use, okay? So first off, you've got your B-red potatoes, B size, B for size. And these are your lowest starch of the three potatoes that we're looking at here today. So these are more for a potato dish like a soup or a salad, where you want to kind of have the potatoes hold their shape a little better. The lower starch helps do that. In the middle, the kind of the moderate medium grade is the yellow potato, like a Yukon Gold, that sort of potato. These make decent mashed potatoes. To make a big batch, that's a lot of peeling you got to do. So again, I think if you're making smashed potatoes, which a lot of us like to do these days where you're leaving the skin on, then I think this is a good choice. But we're making the classic mashed potato, so our choice is going to be the russet or baker potato, large russets. And the reason for that is the russet of these three are the highest in starch. They're about 20 to 22%, which makes them drier, fluffier, and best for mashed potatoes. So I think these are best. That's what we're going to use, okay? All right, so to get started, this recipe is good for 2 to 4 people, depending on how much you love mashed potatoes. And so we're going to use 2 large russets. We've got 1/2 to 3/4 cups of half and half or whole milk. You can use heavy cream if you want. Got a heaping teaspoon of fresh chopped garlic. I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper. Make sure you use white pepper, not black, because obviously you're having a white dish here. You don't want all those black specks all over. And we've got about a teaspoon of coarse sea salt. I've got about 5 tablespoons of fresh soft butter. And for my secret ingredient, nutmeg. We'll talk about that when we get to pulling things together. For some critical equipment you're going to need, obviously you need a pan to boil the potatoes in. You want to cover them with about 2 inches of water. You need a heat-proof bowl for once you are ready to stir all your ingredients together. We're going to want a strainer. We want a parchment-lined sheet pan, baking dish. And the most critical piece of equipment at all is the potato ricer. Great piece of equipment to have. If you don't have it, a food mill will work, otherwise a hand masher. Try to avoid mixing them in a mixer because you're going to burst all the starch cells and just make your potatoes kind of gluey. And you know, I think you all know what that's like when you do that or mix them. We don't want to do that. So anyway, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to peel our potatoes and get them cooking. Okay, we peeled our potatoes. These are pretty nice sized potatoes, so I'm going to cut them in about 4 pieces. And again, you don't want to cut them too small because they'll just end up absorbing too much water. And the idea is to have nice, dry, fluffy potatoes. So let's get these guys cut. We'll get our water in there and we'll get them cooking. Okay, I gave the potatoes a good rinse before I put them on the fire, and I heavily salted the water. It's not the salt from the recipe, so make sure you keep that in mind. And we're going to let those guys cook 20 to 30 minutes till they're fork tender. And while that's cooking, what we're going to do is we're going to heat up our cream, our garlic, our salt and pepper, and a little bit of our nutmeg. So, and the reason I'm going to start this now, obviously you could bring it to a boil in about a minute. What I want to do is just slowly heat that up and let that garlic flavor just infuse into that cream or milk. It just kind of adds a nice, another layer of flavor, another element. And of course, let's not forget our pinch of nutmeg. It's kind of my secret ingredients, so give it a try. All right, we're going to put this on a very low heat. Let that heat up to kind of scalding temperature. At the very end, we'll add our butter to our milk. The reason I do that, number one, I don't want to add cold butter to my hot potatoes, and it'll melt the butter evenly, and then we can mix everything together evenly as well. So I'm also going to preheat my oven to 400 degrees, and we'll talk about that when the potatoes are done. Okay, our potatoes are ready. We let them go about 25 minutes on a soft boil. That's an important point. Once you get that water up to a boil, don't just let it boil crazily, okay? Turn it down so it's just lightly boiling, because you don't want to turn your potatoes just into a bunch of mush. So anyway, now the next step is we're going to take our potatoes and we're going to set them out on our little sheet pan lined with parchment. Good, smelling good. All right. We're going to throw these guys in the oven at 400 for about 8 to 10 minutes, all right? You don't want to go too long because you get too much of a skin on them and then it's harder to pass them through the ricer. But that's a critical step in really getting these potatoes nice and dried out for that really great, light, fluffy potato, right? So in the oven they go. Okay, our potatoes are nice and dried out. Now what we want to do is we want to pass them through our ricer. We want our ricer set on the smallest holes. And we just take our potatoes at a time and just rice them into that bowl. Remember, nice thick heat-proof bowl is best, and I'll tell you why in a second, other than the obvious. But you can see those two potatoes really make pretty good, sizable amount of mashed potatoes, so that's kind of nice. All right, so now before we add our liquid and our flavorings, I just want to let you in on a little secret here. Mashed potatoes are a pretty simple dish. However, when you're doing a big feast and you got 12 items to get out at the same time, the timing can really be a challenge, especially if you don't have a lot of cooking area. So one really cool thing you can do, you can get to this point right here, you can do this a day ahead, even 2 days ahead. Just go ahead and rice your potatoes, cover them, throw them in the refrigerator, and then tomorrow when you're ready to do your meal and you got everything else going on, all you have to do is just simply heat your liquid ingredients, heat your potatoes back up in the microwave, stir it all together, and boom, you're there. You don't have to go through all these steps when you've got a lot of other things going on. So keep that in mind, all right? So we're gonna go ahead and add our liquid. I've got my seasonings, my garlic, my butter all in here. It's been sitting on the stovetop for about 15 minutes. And I'm gonna add about 2/3 of it. You know, whenever you're adding liquid to something, you tend to not want to add it all right away, because every now and then you just have too much, right? So I like a lot of liquid in my potatoes. I don't like them super heavy, but you want them light and fluffy. You know, people can always add their own butter, sour cream, whatever. So I think we have the right amount here though, so I'm gonna end up adding it all. And again, as I was saying, you know, I really think stirring with a wooden spoon, you know, nice flat paddle wooden spoon, or a silicone spatula really is the way to go. And again, try to avoid the mixer, try to avoid over mixing, all right? That's how you really get them nice and light and fluffy. And as always, give them a taste. That's great. That's just great. So we're pretty much there. One thing you can do is, you know, I like to add sometimes some gorgonzola, some manchego, maybe some horseradish, just if you want some additional flavor bursts, or you really want to step it up a notch, maybe like with the horseradish. It's really up to you from that point, right? Just let your creativity and your taste buds and your friends and family kind of guide you along what you want to do. And then you're ready to go. You can serve them right in this bowl. I like to, instead of putting butter over, I really like just drizzling a little bit of extra virgin olive oil over my mashed potatoes. And you already get some butter in there. The olive oil adds another flavor dimension, and it's a lot healthier for you. So there you have it. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving and all your other holidays and all your mashed potato endeavors from here on forth. So enjoy.